have the talent. They have all the talent in the world, but can this coaching staff take it to another level?
Yeah, man. I've been a Nick Sirianni true believer since midway through last season. I mean,
back with you on this Wednesday. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network, coming to you every day, 12 p.m. Eastern to 3. And, of course, you can check out all of our content, JAKIBsports.com as well. All right, always love talking to our next guest. Does an amazing job for the Philadelphia Inquirer. You can follow him on Twitter @BY David Murphy. David, welcome to the show, man. A lot to dive into here for sure with the Birds. Let's start with this one. I know you wrote today about the schedule in the NFC, and I'm with you on both fronts, but let's start with the NFC in general. Even through 2 weeks, I think it's become even more wide open than we maybe anticipated before the season started. I look at the AFC, I see some killers. I look at the NFC and I see, this thing's pretty doable, pretty manageable. You got to be encouraged if you're the Eagles by what's even happening around you thus far.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually kind of hilarious when you look at the rest of the NFC. It was like midway through Monday night's game, and I'm sitting there trying to figure out, who do they rank behind the Eagles in the NFC? And I'm going one by one. And my God, I mean, look, it's not all about the quarterback situation, but let's be honest about the quarterback situation. I mean, you've got Jameis Winston, Baker Mayfield, Carson, Daniel Jones. I mean, Marcus Mariota. Matt Ryan and Russell Wilson leaving the conference, I think has only exacerbated kind of what has been a brain drain at the position over the last handful of years. I mean, when you look at Goff and Carson going 1-2 in 2016, and both of those guys being on their second or third team, and it all kind of started. I mean, I know he's not a NFC guy, but I mean, Andrew Luck retiring early. I mean, it all has a trickle down at that position. And you're just in this world right now where Jalen Hurts might actually be, the fourth best quarterback in the NFC. Whereas you look at the AFC, you got Burrow, Herbert, Mahomes, Russell,
Josh Allen. Yeah,
I don't know what's happening there. I'm sure I've missed a bunch. Derek Carr would probably be the third best quarterback in the NFC right now. And I'm not a big Derek Carr guy. So it's wild. You're looking at. San Fran opened up as a I think road favorite this week with the week after their franchise quarterback, quote unquote, went down with an injury. So, they're clearly better off with Jimmy Garoppolo. It's just a wild time in the NFC. And yeah, it's wide open, man.
Yeah, David, I'm glad you wrote the article because it's point on in terms of the Eagles schedule and when you stack things up. But as you know, fan base here, they don't want to hear that. See, they don't want to hear it's an easy road. So I'm curious, since the article has come out, what kind of feedback have you gotten from the general consensus?
Well, the feedback I've gotten is that somehow people have invented Minnesota becoming a good team all of a sudden. Yeah. They were bottom 4 in yards allowed in defense last year, fired their head coach, have Kirk Cousins as the quarterback. Kirk Cousins has won more than 9 games once in his entire career. Look, I'm not taking anything away from what the Eagles did because, again, like I said, living up to expectations is part of it. The Packers did not live up to expectations in week 1. The Broncos have not lived up to expectations. The Eagles have done what they're supposed to do. But I just love the city. Literally 4 days ago, people wanted Jonathan Gannon to be fired, and now they're a Super Bowl team. What kind of Super Bowl team fires their defensive coordinator after week 1?
Yep.
Exactly. Oh, let me ask you this then. Do you think that this coaching staff is good enough to take them to that next level? I know they have the talent. They have all the talent in the world, but can this coaching staff take it to another level?
Yeah, man. I've been a Nick Sirianni true believer since midway through last season. Look, we've had the good fortune of not being exposed to a lot of awful coaches here in Philadelphia. Even Chip Kelly, they were a competent team. They went 10-6 his first year, 10-6 I think his second year. Made
2 years in a row. Yep,
weren't even awful. They were right in it when they went up to New England in year 3 and beat the Patriots. We don't really know what a really bad coach looks like. So when you watch Nathaniel Hackett in his first 2 games, when you watch Joe Judge up in New York, when you watch Jason Garrett calling plays for people, when you look down in Carolina. I've never been more wrong about somebody in my life than Matt Rule, I think. I mean, that guy's just not a good coach. How do you hire Ben McAdoo when your job is on the line?
I can't believe what he's been as an NFL coach,
Yeah.
Dave. He was so good in college, but man, he's
I know.
overmatched in the NFL.
I was dead wrong. Mike McCarthy.
Yeah.
Not a good coach, And when you watch the Eagles play, look, whether the talent there is, and Doug too, I think Doug is a good coach. I think when you watch his teams, they block, they execute, they're functional. Everything makes sense, And I think Jonathan Gannon, frankly, is not a bad defensive coordinator because, when his defenses look the same way. Like they might not have the talent at all times, but you're not seeing guys run, 15 yards wide open down the field like Quez Watkins.
Nobody around them, yeah.
Like you're not watching. A lot of last year was look. I think one of the big questions about the Eagles: can they get the edge pressure? Because Kirk Cousins, he can't throw the downfield. So as soon as you kind of throw guys in his face, he can't beat you there, and he has to check down. But that's not always going to be the case, and they're going to need, BG to step up. They're going to need Josh Sweat to step up. They're going to need Hassan Reddick to step up. But I think they're well coached, and I think the coaching staff is a huge. And Sirianni's just he's everything looks crisp. It makes sense. He's coaching to his talent. I think they definitely do have the coaching staff.
I think there's a lot of boxes checked with Sirianni. He's not afraid to delegate. He's secure enough in his own skin. He connects with his players clearly. He's willing to, go to a plan B like we saw last year.
Mm-hmm.
He's not stubborn to a fault. He doesn't feel like he created the game like a lot of head coaches do.
Right.
I think we're seeing as time goes on here, he's kind of a perfect guy for this day and age too, because he really does with the vets and with the young guys. There's a connection there. And it looks like they've hired pretty good assistants. I know people want to kill Gannon, as you mentioned, but Steichen all of a sudden looks like he's got a real good handle of this thing so far, Murph, with this offense.
And, I think this is the thing that I've also decided about defenses. I think you have to build a good defense over 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, if you look at some of these head coaches, all these defensive coordinators become head coaches, Dan Quinn, Robert Saleh, the good defenses are always good defenses. You know what I'm saying? Like, because they draft, they have a scheme, and you can't just patch together a defense with 4 free agents like the Eagles are trying to do. You're never going to have a dominant defense that way. Like the Steelers have guys. They're like, we need our TJ Watt now, and they know exactly what they need and how they're going to use him, and they draft that position. They do the same thing with receiver, but on the New England, I mean, the Dolphins look like they might be getting there a little bit, but it's just so hard to constantly rely on free agents year after year when communication is so important on that side of the football. And you saw that again on Monday night with all those breakdowns that the Vikings had in the secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, David, I know it's still early in the season, but I need to see a breakout game from Hassan Reddick. And I've been screaming already about I don't like what I'm seeing in terms of how Gannon is using him. You're right. Gannon has at least shown for the one game that he's willing to change. Mm-hmm. And he did that against Minnesota. But when you look at some of the better so-called pure pass rushers, Micah Parsons, Zadarius Smith, those guys they're always moving up and down the line constantly looking for the hole in the picket fence. They keep Reddick on the one side, and he has nothing to show for it through 2 games. And I'm like, wait a minute, you got to flip the script with this guy. You brought him here because he was that edge rusher you needed. He can't cover. He's not a great tackler in the run game, but he's a pure pass rusher, but you're not utilizing him properly.
Yeah, and look, I'm not saying Gannon's a wizard or anything.
Right.
But I will also say this. Look, there's a reason why Hassan Reddick was available, And I think a lot of talent is kind of scheme dependent at times, and it does depend on how you use guys. And I think Gannon has probably been slow to adapt. But look, last year, we were talking about, and Fletcher Cox was talking about how the problem was that we weren't using Fletcher Cox right. Mm-hmm. Well, turns out Fletcher Cox just ain't very good anymore. I mean, he's
whoa.
I mean, he's fine. I mean, he's fine, but there's a reason why they could resign him for $6 million. They got run over by the Lions. It just. Yeah, I think I don't know how much of the problem is coaching when you look at how they've drafted on that side of the ball over the last decade, really, since Fletcher and Brandon Graham. Fletcher and Brandon Graham are still on the defensive line. They're, it's been 10 years. They're still the best draft picks that they've had at that position. Davion Taylor gets cut after 1 year of being a third round. Like, how many times has that happened? And it goes back to Andy too. I mean, what was the 3-name guy that they cut? The defensive end. I forget his name, but he ended
not Marcus Smith.
He ended up in Tampa Bay at one point, but it's just been, you got to be able to draft and hopefully Jordan Davis is that guy, but you can't just keep on rotating guys through here. You got to build, and again, I'm not saying Gannon's great or anything. I just look at them. I'm like, wow, this is a better coached unit than most teams. I mean, they went 8-0 against bad teams last year, and that's they're not a bad team, and I think that automatically puts them. I mean, they struggle when they have quarterbacks that can sit back and pick them apart. I think. I mean, look, Detroit. We saw they have a great offensive line, and that's it's tough to contend with somebody like that. But we'll see. I don't think they're going to have a dominant unit, but I think that you'd rather have Jonathan Gannon than Ed Donatel.
Well, I ain't kidding about that.
When you look at it, you spoke on Jordan Davis. His rep production. He got a couple more reps than he did the week before. Do you think it's more so they're trying to work him in, him being a young player? Because I was baptized by the fire. I was thrown in and I started every single rep. They're kind of easing him in a little bit. Is it because he's not in shape, or is it that they don't think he's mature enough at this point to take it to that level?
Yeah, I actually don't know what the story is there. I mean, look, I think he profiled. I mean, he's not Fletcher, where Fletcher, you could screen Fletcher and he'll chase you down from 15 yards down the field. Jordan Davis, I'm sure there's some limitations in terms of situation when you'd rather have Hargrave and Fletch in there. But I don't know. I don't know what the story is. I mean, he's a run stopper, and this isn't necessarily a run stopping league, but it's a great question. But at the same time, you kind of have to defer to the coaching staff too. I'm sure they're not. I'm sure they'd all love for Jordan Davis to be playing 75% of the snaps.
Right.
I guess whatever's happening in practice, which we unfortunately don't get to see a whole lot of. It just is what it is. But I'm with you. I mean, I think the guy's really good, but we'll have to see. I think it's a big question. It's an interesting question that's emerged over these first couple of weeks for sure.
Murphy, you sold on Jalen Hurts? You buying it? You buying that he's taken that next step and can get into the elite category? Where are you with him right now?
Look, I think that he is. I don't think he'll. Put it this way. I want my quarterback to be 6'5" and be able to see over the line of scrimmage. And when the offensive line is not there, be able to make plays, So I don't see him put this way. I don't think I would ever draft Jalen Hurts number 1 overall. I would pick Pat Mahomes. I would pick Justin Herbert. I would pick, Joe Burrow, Lawrence. I mean, there's probably 8 or 9 guys in the league that I would consider number 1 overall picks worthy of that pick. Hurts is better than, at least 15 other quarterbacks in the league. And when he is not under pressure and his line is not breaking down, he can win. Yeah, he's a winning quarterback, put it that way. But look, it all depends on what the question is. If you're paying Jalen Hurts $35 million, you don't have A.J. Brown, you might not have the offensive line that you have. You might I think when you say, is a guy elite, the question is, are you re-signing this guy, at a top scale contract? And I would say, no, I am not doing that with Jalen Hurts right now. But do I think they can, make a lot of noise with him this year? Yes. So I think he's improved a lot. Yeah, absolutely. I do. I think his limitations are purely, really size,
Hey, David, based on your article, do you think their softer schedule hurts them more than it helps them? And when I say that, okay, from what we've seen in 2 games, they should win this division. They should get to the playoffs. But when you have a schedule like Buffalo's, Buffalo has one of the toughest schedules in the league. They have to man up every week. There is no time for breathe to this team. You can play a flawed game and win a lot of the games that the Eagles are going to face in opponents, and that's saying you don't take any opponent lightly. Do you think it helps or hurts them more in the bigger scheme of things in terms of trying to go deeper into the playoffs when they have to play the better teams?
I think it helps them. I think it hurts us as we try to figure out,
okay,
who they actually are. I get what you're saying. I think you definitely need. Put it this way, I think the schedule sets up perfect for them. They'll get to play Green Bay. They'll get the they'll get to play Indy. But last year's schedule was brutal. I think that hurt them, and I mean maybe it helped them because it made the second half seem so easy. But I think it hurts. If it hurts them, it will be because they've started reading their own press clippings. When in reality, if St. Louis plays, or I'm sorry, LA plays Minnesota in week 1 instead of Buffalo, and Eagles play Buffalo in week 2 instead of Minnesota. I mean, are we still talking about the Eagles being NFC Super Bowl favorites? We learned this last year, and we've learned this every year, and we forget it every year. The schedule dictates as much about anything as anything. They were 2-5 last year, and if you looked at the schedule, you're like, man, this team could still win 10 games. But again, keep in mind, people want to fire Sirianni when he was talking about Flowers last year in week 5 or 6 or whatever it was. So I don't know. I think they're a fun team. I think there was a big question at the start of the season is, what was this team, really any good last year? Did they just take advantage of like a bunch of backup quarterbacks down the stretch? And I think we've seen they're clearly better than, a bad team or even really a mediocre team, and I think Hurts has a big, is as big a reason as any for that. I mean, he definitely looked like a better passer on Monday night, some of those throws he was making.
Well, I'm just going to say this, regardless of who they're playing, because I truly believe in my heart of hearts that it didn't matter who the Eagles played in week 2 after the way they played against Detroit in week 1. I think they prepared themselves so well that even if they'd have played against the LA team or anybody else, and it'd have been a great run even against the Bills team, because they have a good team now. They have really, really good corners. They have really good offensive line. They have really good receivers. And when you look for player, I just think they're a better team than I think we're at least giving them credit for. So we're going to see some success because of it.
No doubt. I mean, I said at the beginning of the season that if anybody else was at quarterback, people would be talking. Like if Carson Wentz was still here and they had this roster, people would be expecting Super Bowl.
Oh, no question. Yep, absolutely right. Yep.
If you take any one of 10 to 12 guys in the league and put them at quarterback instead of Jalen Hurts, the Eagles are being touted at the beginning of the season as a Super Bowl. Then, I mean, you put Derek Carr with this team, people are saying, are the Eagles the best team in the NFC? So yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes down to Hurts, and I think he's going to ball out for most of this season because we've already seen him do that against the kind of teams that they're going to be playing for the most part. I think the big question that we, like to Derek's point, we won't be able to answer until the playoffs really is seeing them against a top tier defense, and I mean, Minnesota and Detroit finished last year as 2 of the 4 worst teams in the league in total yards allowed on the defensive side of the football.
Yep.
And neither one of those teams got any better. I guess Detroit got better up front.
Yeah, Detroit's better, I think.
But they're still, I mean, Carson threw for 300 yards against them last week, So we'll see. I mean, I think the Redskins, are probably maybe a little better. They're not nearly as good as we thought they were last year on the defensive side of the football, but we'll see. I'm interested. I'll say this: as long as this offensive line plays the way they did against, Minnesota,
yes,
a lot of people could play quarterback right now and have some success. But
exactly.
But I'm with you. I think Hurts. I think all it comes down I think they're a top talent wise. Yes, they're way better. They're in a much better position than they were last year. I would be surprised if they, don't win a game against a winning team this year. But now we're talking about, can you win a playoff game?
The expectations have been raised for sure.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt.
Well, Murph, what do you think? We mentioned Carson a couple times. This will be an emotional game as much as he probably downplays it to the public. But we know he is a guy who can tend to kind of get in his own way sometimes, to say the least. Do you think we see a way too jacked up Carson early? Or if this thing starts to go sideways, he starts playing hero ball? How do you think Carson's going to respond to play against the Eagles?
I don't know, man. I've been wrong about Carson a lot over the last 3 or 4 years. So I know this.
Me too.
I think and it's all mental, the guy is clearly just a different kind of cat than I thought he was, in 2017. I don't know if he does not strike me as the kind of guy who is going to rise to the moment, put it that way, he seems more like the kind of guy who would get flustered by it,
Yep.
you know? And, you know, I think if they can put pressure on him, you know, he just can't make decisions at the speed that he used to make. And, you know, you've seen that in the first 2 weeks of the season too. I've actually watched probably most of his throws over the first couple of weeks, just because I've been able to sit down and watch a lot of the games. Look, he's always been good. I mean, he's still good. You know, you'd still rather have him than, you know, probably Baker Mayfield or, you know,
Very capable, yes. Very capable.
And look, the one look he'll give the Eagles defense that they have not seen the first 2 weeks of the season is a guy who can stand in there and make a throw 15, 20 yards down the field, even when he's got a lot of traffic around him. And Goff and Cousins just aren't that kind of, you know, Goff and Cousins just aren't that kind of quarterback. You know, they're not gonna beat you that way. So they'll give him a different look, and it's why I think people still keep taking chances on Carson. And look, they won 9 games in Indianapolis last year with Carson Wentz. They have not won a game yet in Indianapolis this season with you know, Matt Ryan and Frank Reich. So you know, I think he's probably still a little bit better of a you know, quarterback for your team than a lot of people give him credit for. I mean, I would take him over, frankly, Cousins. You know,
he's big too, man. He's big and athletic.
And he's got some mobility out of the pocket, which they haven't faced yet either.
Right,
with Goff
right.
and Cousins last week.
But you're right. He just kind of melts down, and you know, I don't know where that comes from, but it's been consistent enough for 3 years now that it's obviously a thing. So I'm interested to see how it works out. I know this. Vegas usually doesn't make teams 6.5-point favorites on the road in division games. If you know,
that's a pretty big line, man. When you consider
it's now again, you got to keep in mind. I mean, I'm sure Vegas knows Eagles fans are nuts, and I'm sure they bet their team harder than anybody else. And but yeah, I mean, they're clearly the Eagles are on a different level right now than some of these other teams that people wonder if they are elite. You know, they're definitely a better team than Washington. It just comes down to that, you know.
Do you think Carson is on his last hurrah? If he fails in Washington, this is it for him in terms of being a starter in the National Football League?
No, I think well, I mean, I think in an ideal world you would say that. But I mean, look, the quarterback position is such right now that, like, I mean, Geno Smith is starting for a team, you know.
Oh yeah.
Like Joe Flacco is still starting games.
Oh,
you know?
Won a game last week.
I think Wentz's last I think his next chapter. I think he'll always have that Flacco chapter if he wants it, you know. Because again, he's perfectly capable, you know. The Redskins are one. I mean, they beat the Jaguars, who just beat the Colts, you know, and
right.
Wentz looked fine in that game, except for, again, a couple boneheaded plays. So yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone is looking. To answer your question, Derek, I don't think anyone is going to be looking at Carson Wentz as, like, you know, maybe he has a Ryan Tannehill second act in him anymore, you know. But you know, if he wants to be if he wants to be Ryan Fitzpatrick or, you know, Tyrod Taylor or any of these other, you know, Matt Castle back in the day, like just kind of keep popping around to, you know, whoever happens to need a quarterback. I think he could. I think he could look back and do that for probably a decade, given the way the position is right now, you know.
Murphy, I did want to hit you with little Phillies before we get you out of here.
Oh yeah, let's go. Come on,
because you know you've been here, done that before, and covered this. And when this has gotten crazy for them, we know the history in last year, and 20, and 19, and 18, in this month, and it ain't good. Okay, and I know there's a lot of new faces. Not everybody was around for some of that mess, but it kind of has that feeling. It's starting to feel that way. And some key things that they need, like pitching, whether it's starting or bullpen, is abandoning them right now. What's your sense of where they are?
Well, I think my sense is that it's a good thing that they're competing with Milwaukee right now, because Milwaukee in the same, you know.
Yep.
I mean, 2 games is still a lot this time of year, especially when you're playing, especially when it's over, you know, a team that's also kind of can't get out of its own way. But yeah, I mean, 5 straight games isn't good. I think, look, a lot of this has been smoke and mirrors all season, you know. Pitching wise, you know, they just don't have the horses, you know, and they need Zach Wheeler. They absolutely need Zach Wheeler, you know, and they need Sir Anthony, you know, to be Sir Anthony, and they need Yeah, I mean, it's all going to come down. I don't know. All season I've been saying I think the Phillies are good, but I don't think they're this good, and I'm not sure they have the pitching to do it. And I think they're going to do it. I think it would be awfully hard for them not to do it. I think, they've clearly showed us that they can bounce back from adversity all season, and I think that's actually a real thing. And I think they have that. And I mean, I think the bigger question is, what are you going to get out of Wheeler? Because if you make the playoffs and he's not in your rotation, then what does it even matter?
Well, see, I don't understand that, David. I understand it was always going to be our Achilles heel. Pitching was going to be that. That's just by the nature of how we entered into this season. But I think we're going to score. We should be scoring more than we should right now. And that's the biggest fact. We should be able to outscore teams. I mean, a team scores 6. We should score 10.
Well, you scored 11 last night. You scored 11. You gave up 18.
The defense was just beyond brutal as well.
But the pitchers that we were praising in July and August, this bullpen we were praising, all of a sudden has become a model of inconsistency. And I've never seen something like this. It's been a while since I've seen something like this where it all goes bad at once. Okay, you have 1 or 2 guys that may be up and down, but it's
exactly.
Now it doesn't make a difference who you put on the mound at any given time. You're sitting there going, "Oh, geez."
What's the lesson? Don't praise them.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, but you know what? We were praising them when they made the managerial change, and all of a sudden, even though they were having injuries, it was gelling. You know, when Anthony stepped to the hill, it was lights out. Alvarado stepped to the hill, lights out. Stop. These guys, they step lights out. Now all of a sudden, it's like, oh my, what's going to? Prime example last night, Coonrad, Hand, all of them. Brogdon. It's like it's not just a job; it's an adventure. Yeah. Gibson, my goodness, the most consistent pitcher has been Falters. And they won't let him pitch past 5 innings most of the time.
Well, they're probably smart about that, but
they let Gibson go last night, and
I know.
Gave up 12 hits.
Don't get me started on Kyle Gibson either, man.
Oh my goodness!
I've been looking at this team all season, saying, if you got Kyle Gibson in your rotation, you don't got a rotation, But but he's been fine. Like, I'm with you, but I think it still comes down to more they just they were in a nice groove for several months, and it was always wise to realize that this could happen. All I know is this: you look at teams like the Braves and the Mets. Just look at the arms that they have in their pen that they could run out every night.
Yep.
I mean, you said it yourself, Derek. Brad Hand, Coonrod, like probably 35% of the city doesn't even know who Sam Coonrod is. Connor Brogdon. They're just you're going. I think you're going to get. I'm with you. It's bizarre that it all goes wrong at the same time, but I don't know that you could expect anything else from them. This is kind of what bad what happens with like bad bullpens. Like Barry said, they're just going to have to score runs consistently enough, and then throw strikes and let the chips fall. And I think they're going to. I think this is a bad stretch, and they're fortunate that they're still where they are, and they're not running into a team that's playing really good baseball right now.
Thompson destroyed his bullpen last night. I mean, because Toronto lit him up. It may happen again tonight because Toronto is such a good hitting team. Yeah. And then what the heck are you going to do in an all-important 4-game series against the Braves this weekend?
And by the way, Wheeler's on a pitch count tonight of probably about 45 pitches, so you will be leaning heavily on the bullpen again tonight.
FYI. Who are you going to? The question is.
I think it's more reasonable to say you got to score runs than to say this bullpen's got to be good.
I agree. You need to win an 8-6 game tonight.
But they need to. But Derek, to your point, like they need Sir Anthony to be like he's their guy. And they need him to be. If they get to they have the 8th and 9th inning locked. If they like Alvarado's been great. And
yes.
Sir Anthony's had some hiccups, but he throws 100, and he's one of the better. He's one of the better arms. Like you're all right. You just got to win those games. You got to win the games that you can't give those away. Because I just don't know how much you're going to get out of the other guys. Like 7 runs is going to become 18. A lot with those guys on the mound.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
But we'll see. I'm rooting for him. I think this city needs a Phillies playoff run, and if they get in there and Wheeler's healthy, I think that they can make a little noise because they have 2 Cy Young caliber starters.
That's why I'm so glad they went to the game. They saw that winning attitude at the game. So maybe that rubs off on them a little bit, for Monday night.
Yeah,
They get inspired.
there
They
you
get
go.
inspired last night, but
Well, I was going to say,
come to this.
Can Bradley Cooper pitch, by the way? So if we're just going by people who were at there, or James Harden, maybe?
Right.
They allowed 11 more points in the Eagles defense.
Oh, jeez, that's a good point. Good line. Murph, we'll go out on that note. Drop the mic. We appreciate it, man. We check out
Thank
your
you,
work
Murph.
at choir.com and on Twitter at by David Murphy. Thanks, Murph.
Appreciate it, bro.
Thank you,
Okay,
dude.
take care. That's David Murphy. Always good insight from David. I like that you can jump around a little bit with him as well. All right, we're going to step aside. We'll come back. We'll dig a little bit deeper into the Phillies. And then, of course, we will go through our QB rankings, guys, in the NFL. We got some NFL news as well, a couple little updates, which we'll pass along to you. And we'll do some other stuff as well regarding the NFL, some stuff that's coming down as we speak. We'll do all of that when we come back. Derek Gunn, Barrett Brooks, Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. All right, let's talk about infrastructure management and Razor technology. IT infrastructure environments are more complex and heterogeneous than ever before. Consequently, teams struggle to respond to pressing issues with the speed necessary to promote positive business results, and the data that powers predictive monitoring and automation is left unexploited. Razor Technology addresses this challenge with a holistic approach that connects every part of an organization's technology assets, enabling proactive and secure IT operations without sacrificing the agility that drives innovation. Razor Technology automates monitoring and management to bolster IT teams that are feeling stretched thin, and it improves auditing and reporting procedures so that actionable insights find their way to the leaders that need them most. Save time and money on your IT and cloud services and secure your organization with leading end-to-end infrastructure solutions by calling Razor Tech today at 866-797-3282, 866-797-3282, or visit us online at razor-tech.com, razor-tech.com.